College basketball's regular season is broken. In an attempt to make November-December produce watchable games, we now have the Champions Classic, CBS Sports Classic, but you can call them whatever you want. They are preseason games. The TV ratings are not what they should be, and considering the teams on the ticket, these games are not attended all that well. But we can fix it, and I'm going to show you how. Now, if you clicked on this because you already understand, the regular season of college basketball is a series of meaningless games only meant to give the illusion of importance so we can trick ourselves into caring, because to not care would mean to slip further into a deep void of nihilism, making us all wonder, what is the point of all this? Well, then you can use the cursor below to scan to the solution. If you want to know why college basketball is in need of fixing, keep watching. Prior to Kentucky taking on UCLA in Madison Square Garden in December of 2022, John Calipari warned fans about the demand there would be for tickets. To his credit, the game was announced as a sellout, aided of course by all of those fans who were dressed up as empty seats. What happened to the days of the basketball when over 78,000 Kentucky and Michigan State fans packed Ford Field for a regular season game? What happened to Kentucky basketball games being hard to attend? And what happened to college basketball attendance in general? People like to argue the at-home viewing experience is better, it's too expensive to go, and there are more things going on. And I could buy any of those excuses if there weren't games where people camped out all day to be able to attend. This is proof that fans will not only go to the games, they will go to great lengths to be there in person if there is something on the line, like a much-needed Quad 1 win. And that is the issue. Why can't you get 78,000 people to attend an out-of-conference regular season game anymore? Well, because since 2003, college basketball fans have become wise to the fact that these games do not matter. Every single one of these out-of-conference games are glorified exhibitions, which is why the ratings look like they do. The 2022 Champions Classic doubleheader averaged 1.8 million viewers on ESPN, but it was still beaten by the college football playoff show that aired between the games. And it is still less than the noon kickoff between NC State and East Carolina last season. And if it's not any of these teams, the game was not likely to get anywhere close to 1.5 million viewers. Here are the games with 2 million or more viewers from last season. Only one game was outside of conference play. But people love watching college basketball when the stakes are high, as evidenced by March Madness, which would get 3 million viewers for matchups like Tennessee versus Louisiana. So people will watch if you give them a reason to. The NCAA has tried their best to quantify regular season out-of-conference games some way by using the net to determine good wins and bad losses, but it's still void of meaning. There is just nothing on the line in the out-of-conference except maybe a seed line, which can be important. People just don't perceive it that way anymore, considering Kentucky as a 4 seed and an 8 seed has made the Final Four, while as a 1 seed has fallen short. The UConn Huskies have now won a title as a 7 seed and a 4 seed twice in the last 12 years with 3 different coaches. When you get a Final Four that consists of a 4 seed, 2 5 seeds, and a 9 seed, you're going to have a really hard time convincing me that Kentucky versus UCLA in December is a big deal. The only reward for winning that game is that it could end up being a factor at the end of the season when calculating Quad 1 wins. What's the reward for winning all of your out-of-conference regular season games? Maybe it will help you earn a 1 seed and have the best chances of making it to the Elite 8 and Final Four. But what good did a 1 seed do for Purdue last season? What good did a 1 seed or a 2 seed do anyone last season? With a postseason tournament that is this wide open, mediocrity in the regular season is rewarded just as much as going undefeated. Since John Calipari took over at Kentucky, the Final Four has included at least one team seeded 4th or higher. In 9 of the 12, a 5 seed or higher made the Final Four. While the tournament's randomness makes it fun, it has made the regular season unimportant. Even as a heavily invested Kentucky fan, I find that I am forcing myself to care about some of these contests. I'm supposed to get excited and care about any of these games? No one is lining up outside to see Kentucky take on the UNC Wilmington Falcons, a team you know so little about that you didn't realize they're not the Falcons, they're the Seahawks. How am I supposed to show enthusiasm for a game where if Kentucky doesn't win by 20, that's not good? How do we make people care? The solution is to find a way to get March Madness in November, December without taking away what the tournament gives us in March. And through a little bit of research, parallel thinking, and creativity, I think we found it. This would not only save the entire college basketball season, but would offer meaningful, must-watch games in November and December. Sports Illustrated originally pitched this idea in 2013, and it was pitched by a few other college basketball sites that saw the trend of less and less viewers and attendance for games in November, December. That pitch was using the Champions League model that you see for European soccer. This format would 100% make college basketball worthy of our attention in the early months. So here's how a college basketball Champions League would have looked last season. Using conference ratings, we would divvy up the teams like this. Just like they do for the Champions League, we would use the results from the previous season. But won't that be a totally different team than the one that's playing in the tournament? Yeah, it will, and that's okay. This is not a tournament to decide who the best team is this season. That's for the NCAA tournament to decide. So, the 24 teams from multi-bid leagues are automatically placed in the group stages using the previous season's conference standings. So since this is the 2022 Champions League, we would use the 2021-22 conference standings. The remaining 24 teams who won their conference outright would have to play their way into the group stage. Again, using the previous season's net rankings, seeds 33 through 48 would have played each other in the opening round on November 2nd, with seeds 33 through 40 hosting seeds 41 through 48. And we'll use NCAASim.com and 2022-23's roster to simulate these rounds and get us our 8 winners. They would have then gone on the road to face seeds 25 to 32 on November 5th. And in the second qualifying round, we would have 8 winners who would be placed as the 4 seed in their respective groups. Others have suggested that this tournament worked just like the Champions League in Europe, with a 6-game slate of home and away for all the teams. Having each team play each other once would probably be more realistic. Therefore, an example of a group stage schedule would have looked like this. All 3 games are on Tuesday nights, while other group stage games could all be on Wednesday nights. And after all 4 teams have played each other, the 2 teams with the best records advance to the next round. Of course, only playing 3 games means there will probably be some ties within the record, and those will be broken by point differential. In the final game of the group stage, that could create intense drama in a game where a team who's winning by 20 needs to win by 29 and able to advance. So once we have 2 winners from all 8 groups, we then have 16 teams for the first round of the knockout stage. The teams that finish first in the group will host teams who finish second from a different group. And these games would have been played on November 29th and 30th. Once we have our 8 winners from that round, we move on to the quarterfinals. And before that quarterfinal round, we have another made-for-TV moment. A 30-minute selection show where the 8 teams are pulled at random to determine home team and opponent. These 4 games would have been played on December 6th and December 7th. And we'll see that Kentucky got a big lead against Villanova, cruised to a win. Also winning was UCLA, Purdue, and Houston. And with 4 teams left, the final drawing is done to find out who will be facing who in the semifinal at a neutral site. Let's say Madison Square Garden, for a Tuesday-Wednesday event. The semifinal on Tuesday, December 13th, could have featured Kentucky versus UCLA and Houston versus Purdue. And these ended up being great games. Purdue hit a 3-pointer at the buzzer to beat Houston 73-71, and Kentucky held off UCLA for a 4-point win to make it to the final round. And then we move on to the final day, December 14th. In primetime, the championship game would have aired following the consolation game. A culmination of 2 seasons all comes down to this. You're telling me you wouldn't watch that? You're telling me Kentucky fans wouldn't pack that place out if some real hardware was on the line? And it was Zach Edey's putback that won the first Champions League for the Boilermakers. In total, Kentucky would have played 7 games in this tournament. And when that ended, Kentucky would still be able to play their games versus Louisville and could schedule some Friday night games in November, December still. But here is why this tournament really helps college basketball's regular season all across the board, from Power 5 conferences on down. These conference games now hold more weight. Now finishing 4th in the SEC means you will miss out on next year's chance at the Champions League title. It would give that final day of the regular season a little bit more meaning. Antonio Reeves' 37-point day would have been the reason Kentucky would be back in it next year, and not Missouri, who had the tiebreaker on Kentucky and Tennessee. And for those 1-bid leagues who win their regular season but lose in the conference tournament, there is a bigger reward than an auto bid to the NIT. And it now offers 5 different measures of success for a season. How far did you get in the Champions League? Did you win your conference outright? Did you qualify for next year's Champions League? Did you win your conference tournament? And how far did you get in the NCAA tournament? And before we wrap this up, I want to address the "they'll never go for this" crowd. Major changes happen in college sports all the time. Football very recently used to decide their national champion by just some guys voting for who they thought the best team was. And soon, we're going to have a 12-team playoff. The NBA just put in their own version of this that will play in November. But this collegiate version could be even better. Right now, all I can see is how this helps college basketball, a sport that means a lot to a lot of people. As fans of that sport, we deserve better than what we're being offered. So share this video or the links that I have posted below, and let's demand better as fans.